What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be continuing on the the Reconquista series, the Spain Islamic Spain series. So just a bit of a recap from where we last went off. So Al Andalus to the Almohads, Spain after the Islamic conquest. After the Islamic conquest of Spain, Iberia did not become one simple Muslim Spain like many perceive it to be. It became a political roller coaster where governors, rebellions, dynasties, golden ages, civil wars, tiny kingdoms, North African empires, and Christian expansion. Basically, medieval Iberia was less of a stable kingdom and more of a group project where everybody wants to be the leader. So, early Al-Andalus, province of the Umayyad Caliphate. So after the conquest, Islamic Spain became Al-Andalus, a province of the larger Umayyad Caliphate, ruled from Damascus. At first, Al-Andalus was ruled by local governors appointed from North Africa or the Eastern Islamic world, like the Arabian Peninsula, but the new society um, had serious tensions. So the main groups, I mentioned this in the previous video. So we have the Arabs, often the military ruling elite class, the Berbers, which were the North African Muslims who made up much of the invading military force, the Muwallads, the local Iberians who have converted to Islam, the Mozarabs, which were the Christians living under Muslim rule, and the Jewish people who actually were able to find more opportunity living under Muslim rule than under the old Visigothic nobles. The problem here was that our Arab elites often treated Berbers as second-class Muslims, and this was not just a problem here in Spain. Obviously, this was a problem all over the Islamic world. This tension contributed to the Berber revolt of the 740s, which shook much of Islamic rule in North Africa and Iberia. Moving on, the fall of the Umayyads and the arrival of Abd al-Rahman the First. So in 750, the Umayyad Caliphate was overthrown by the Abbasids, who moved the center of Islamic religious power to Baghdad. Most of the Umayyad family were actually killed, but one prince was able to escape. So this prince is Abd al-Rahman the First. He fled across North Africa and eventually arrived in Al-Andalus in 755. In 756, he defeated local rivals and established the Emirate of Cordoba. This is huge. Al-Andalus was now politically independent from the Abbasids. Although Abd al-Rahman did not claim to be caliph, he ruled as an emir of an emirate. His achievement was remarkable because he turned a chaotic province into a stable dynasty. He had to deal with the Arabs, factionalism, the Berber unrest, local rebellions, the Christians to the north and to the the east, and Abbasid hostilities. So Rahman the First basically walked into a political dumpster fire and said, "Hey, I'll build a state out of this." So moving on, Emirate of Cordoba. From 756 to 929, Al-Andalus was ruled by Umayyad emirs. Cordoba became the political and cultural heart of Muslim Spain. The Umayyads built up a powerful government, tax system, and military, but unity was always a issue. Main problems were that the emirs faced constant challenges from local Muslim rebels, the Christian kingdoms, the Arab tribes, Berber grievances, and the powerful frontier nobles. One major issue was that many local converts wanted equal treatment. They were Muslim, but the problem is that the old Arab elites often looked down upon these, what they consider a second-class Muslim. So this created repeated rebellion. Now the Christian kingdoms to the north. So while Al-Andalus dominated most of Iberia, Christian resistance survived in the north. The earliest major Christian kingdom was Asturias, associated with the Paleo and the Battle of Covadonga. Over time, Christian states developed into Asturias, Leon, Navarre, Castile, Aragon, and Catalan countries. At first, these kingdoms were small and defensive. They were not yet powerful enough to destroy Al-Andalus, but they survived because northern Iberia was mountainous and far from Cordoba. The north was like the annoying little "Are you still there?" notification that Cordoba was not able to get rid of. Next, Abd al-Rahman III and the Caliphate of Cordoba. The greatest turning point came under this ruler, Abd al-Rahman III. He ruled from 912 to 961. When he came to power, Al-Andalus was unstable. Rebellions were widespread. Cordoba's authority had weakened, but Rahman was an extraordinary ruler. He crushed rebellions, strengthened the army, reorganized the state, and restored central authority. So then in 929, he declared himself the Caliph of Cordoba. So this is a very bold move. The Caliph was not just a king, he claimed religious and political leadership of the Muslim community. So by declaring caliphate, Abd al-Rahman III challenged both the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad and the Fatimid Caliph in North Africa. So it was actually the medieval equivalent of saying, "I am the main character." So moving on, the Golden Age of Cordoba, the ornament of the world. Under Abd al-Rahman III and his son al-Hakam II, Cordoba became one of the most advanced cities in Europe. It was famous for its libraries, scholars, physicians, poets, philosophers, translators, architecture, religious study, luxury goods, and urban life. So Cordoba had paved streets, public lighting, gardens, baths, markets, and schools at a time where many European cities were still giving like mud hut energy. Moving on, we have cultural achievements. So, like I said, the ornament of the world. So Al-Andalus became a major center of religious learning for Muslims, Jews, and Christians. They participated in intellectual life, but though it was not always equal or peaceful. Some important fields that these scholars would work together on is medicine, astronomy, math, philosophy, agriculture, poetry, and obviously theology. The Great Mosque of Cordoba became one of the most astounding architectural masterpieces of the Islamic world, blending both European and Middle Eastern influence. Moving on, we have Al-Manzur, so military power and political trouble. Al-Manzur ibn Abi Amir, he dominated Cordoba from the 970s to 1002. Al-Manzur launched repeated campaigns against Christians in the north. His most famous attack was the sacking of Santiago de Compostela in 997. Militarily, he was extremely effective. Politically, though, he was weakened through the Umayyad Caliphate. He weakened the Umayyad Caliphate by reducing the caliph to a puppet. The state became much dependent on his personal power. So this is the classic medieval problem. One guy is so competent and smart. This is actually described in Plato's The Republic, but he's so competent that the system forgets how to function without him, and then he dies, and then everyone suddenly realizes there was an empire held by vibes and fear. So, collapse of the Caliphate, the Fitna. After Al-Manzur's death in 1002, Cordoba fell into civil war. This was called the Fitna of Al-Andalus, lasting roughly around 1009 to 1031. The conflict involved Umayyad claimants, Berber armies, Arab factions, Slavic military elites, local rulers, and competing city governments. Cordoba was damaged, the caliphate collapsed, and in 1031, the Caliphate of Cordoba officially ended. So this was one of the biggest turning points in Iberian history. 9. So the Taifa kingdoms after the fall of Cordoba, Al-Andalus fragmented into many smaller Muslim states referred to as taifas. So some of these bigger taifa states are Seville, Granada, Toledo, Zaragoza, uh, Badajoz, Valencia, and Malaga. These kingdoms were often wealthy and culturally brilliant, but politically weak. They competed with each other constantly. Muslim rulers, sometimes allied with Christian kings against other Muslims. Yes, medieval politics is very messy. So, like, think of like Game of Thrones, but like real. Um, the Taifa period, it produced incredible art, literature, architecture, and courtly culture. So, rulers would compete to attract great poets, scholars, musicians, architects, and philosophers, but military weakness was a big problem. The Taifas often paid tribute to Christian kingdoms. This tribute was known as pariahs. The Christian rulers loved this system because it made them rich. Muslim rulers hated it because obviously, paying your enemies not to invade you is not like a flex. So moving on to Christian expansion and the fall of Toledo. So the Christian kingdoms were able to grow stronger during this period, and a major shock came in the 1085 fall of Toledo, where King Alfonso VI of Leon Castile captured Toledo. So this was enormous. Toledo had been the old Visigothic capital of Visigothic capital, and was a major cultural and strategic city. Its fall showed that the balance of power had quickly shifted. For Muslims in Al-Andalus, this was panic mode. The Taifa rulers realized they could not stop for Christian expansion alone, so they called for help from North Africa. So that help came from the Almoravids. So, the Almoravids were a strict Islamic reform movement from North Africa, especially among Berber individuals in the Sahara and Morocco. Their leader was Yusuf ibn Tashfin. He crossed into Iberia and defeated Alfonso VI at the Battle of Zalaka in 1086. So this victory temporarily stopped Christian expansion. At first, the Taifa rulers were relieved. Then they realized something important. The Almoravids had not just come to help, they have come to take over. So the Almoravids looked at the Taifa kings and basically said, you guys are rich, divided, morally suspicious, and we'll be confiscating the entire peninsula. So by the 1090s, the Almoravids had absorbed most of Al-Andalus into their empire. So Almoravid rule in Al-Andalus. The Almoravids brought greater unity and military strength, but they were not as culturally flexible as earlier Andalusi rulers. And they emphasized Sunni orthodoxy, religious discipline, legal conservative, and military defense. So they disliked the luxury and political softness of the Taifa courts. However, governing Al-Andalus was difficult, and Andalusian society was urban, sophisticated, and used to a much more refined court culture. The Almoravids came from a more austere background. So there was tension between North African religious reform, Al-Andalusian urban culture, local elites, Christian military pressure, and the Almoravids were good at conquesting, but their long-term administration was noticeably weaker. Classic empire problem is conquering the place is level 1, but actually governing it is way harder. So the decline of the Almoravids. So by the 1100s, Almoravid power became to weaken. So some of these reasons are the Christian pressures. The Christian kingdoms were continuing their expansion. So, like I said, important powers is Castile-Leon, Aragon, Portugal, and Navarre. So many Andalusians really disliked the Almoravids. They saw them as an outsider. There was a rise of a new reform movement. So in North Africa, a new religious and political force emerged called the Almohads. So the Almohads were an even more radical group of reformers rather than the Almoravids. So basically the Almoravids were strict, and the Almohads looked at it and said, no, not strict enough. So the rise of the Almohads. So the movement began with Ibn Tumart. He preached religious reform in Morocco in the early 1100s. He emphasizes that the absolute unity of God, Tawhid, which gave the movement its name. Oh fuck, I don't know. This is gonna be hard for me to say, so bear with me. Al Muwahhidin, those who proclaim divine unity. So after Ibn Tumar's death, leadership passed to Abd al-Mumin. He transformed the movement into a powerful empire. So the Almohads had defeated the Almoravids and captured Marrakesh in 1147. They then expanded into Al-Andalus, and Marrakesh is in Morocco, by the way. So the Almohads enter Spain. So by the mid-1100s, the Almohads began taking control of Muslim Spain. Like the Almoravids before them, they crossed into North Africa to defend Al-Andalus from Christian expansion and to impose their own religious political order. They took control of key cities, including Seville, Cordoba, Granada, and Malaga. So Seville became a major Almohad stronghold in Iberia. The Almohads had brought new energy, including stronger armies and major architectural projects. So Almohad society and culture, they were religious reformers, but their empire also produced impressive feats of culture. Important figures associated with this period include Ibn Rushd, a major philosopher from Cordoba who wrote influential commentaries on Aristotle. Maimonides, a Jewish philosopher and physician born in Cordoba. Though Almohad pressure forced his family to leave, this shows the complicated nature of the period. The Almohads supported intellectual life in some areas, but they were less tolerant towards Christians and Jewish people than earlier Andalusian regimes. So under earlier Muslim rule, Christians and Jews were protected under this thing known as a dhimmi, which means they had subordinate, but legally they were subordinates, but they had legally recognized status. So under the Almohads, religious pressure increased significantly. So it's culturally brilliant, sure, but in terms of religion, it's not so chill. So why this matters? So from the fall of the Visigoths to the rise of the Almohads, Iberia changed dramatically. The key pattern is unity, fragmentation, North African intervention, renewed unity, and then renewed pressure. And then the cycle just kind of repeats. So we've seen this under the Umayyads, the Taifas, the Almoravids, and the Almohads. So the big takeaway here is that the history of Al-Andalus was not so simple. It's the story of Muslims versus Christians for sure, but it's much more complex. Muslims fought Muslims, Christians fought Christians, Muslims allied with Christians, Christian kings accepted Muslim tribute, Muslim rulers hired Christian mercenaries, everyone claimed moral superiority while doing extremely practical politics behind the scenes. So in other words, medieval Iberia was not a clean religious chessboard, it was a crowded political marketplace where faith mattered deeply, but so did money, land, prestige, survival, and power.